Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Renewed by the Spirit, the program that evangelizes and brings topical issues to the fore. Tonight, I'm very happy to introduce a really special panel, and we're here to speak on abortion and the Zika virus in particular. As you know, it's a very topical issue. It's been in the news, the newspapers, the media, and so we want to highlight some of the important issues in relation to that. So we're going to look at the effects of abortion. We're going to look specifically at the effects on microcephaly babies and the effects as well on society as a whole. So my star-studded panel tonight consists of, firstly to my left, Mr. Alan Julian. He is a member of the Catholic Voices community. We have Mrs. Pauline Phelps. She's a member of BOMA, the Billings Ovulation Method Association. And we have Neka Boslan, a brand new mother who is here to share her joys of motherhood. And she also has with her little baby Matthew, of course, the youngest star on the show. So we're very happy to get cracking on this show. We have a lot to share in the short hour that we have. Somewhere, maybe within the next half hour or so, we will open up the lines and we will allow you, the viewer, to call in and make your input as well. So, Alan, I want to start with you right off. Sure. We're speaking about abortion. Could you give us a definition of abortion that we can work with?
Okay. What I'll do is I will give a legal definition. And the legal definition of abortion states that it's the premature termination of a pregnancy, the intentional and artificial termination of a pregnancy that destroys an embryo or fetus. That's the legal definition.
I see.
Well, something that really jumped out to me there is the word fetus. It's a Latin word, and it sounds so impersonal, but the word fetus actually means the unborn offspring of a mammal. So a fetus is really your offspring, it's your child. That's something a lot of people don't know, that definition.
Not a clump of cells.
Not a clump of cells, it's your offspring.
Okay, so as we know, in this country and throughout the world, there are many people who undergo that surgery called abortion, really, to terminate, as the definition says, a pregnancy. The question I want to put to you all, obviously, is why? If, as you've described, fetus is a child, it's within you, why would someone want to terminate one's own child, one's own offspring?
Well, a common reason would be that of, in the case of rape or incest. And those two things being very tragic situations in and of themselves, to think of an abortion at that time may seem that, okay, I've been through something tragic, and how could anything good come out of this, right? And a baby that I didn't intend, that I didn't want, has been forced upon me. And so these women, even though they've been through a horrible tragedy, they may go on to create another tragedy, another horror, by ending the life of an unborn child.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say as well that many see Pope Francis as the most compassionate Catholic person and so on, and a lot have rallied around him being this compassionate one, so that he also is compassionate to the mothers and so on, which is actually very true. The Church's position is this is an absolute tragedy for the mother and the baby, an absolute tragic situation. Doesn't matter what the situation is, it's a tragic situation for both mother and child. But also in his compassion, Pope Francis, in his most recent Amoris Laetitia, says that an innocent child in the womb has an inalienable right to life, and that no alleged right to one's own body can justify the decision to terminate that life, which is an end in itself, and which can never be considered the property of another human being. So in other words, the child is a separate person.
Pam Stenzel speaks all over the world, but especially in the U.S., she runs a chastity seminar, and she herself was the result of a rape, and she was adopted, right? And what she has says is very profound. She said, "I did not deserve the death penalty because of my father's crime."
Wow.
Okay? So that is very profound in that understanding what Pope Francis was trying to say, that this is a separate human life, that, you know, ending that life is ending, you know, someone we will never come to know.
I'd also say that the church's position is not either or. It's not, well, the child is more important than the mother, or the mother is more important. It's both. Both persons are human beings with their separate rights, and they are separate persons, and are all intrinsically entitled to the right of life, both mother and the child.
Also, in the case of incest, you know, again, another tragic situation where a young girl becomes pregnant because of a violation to her body, right? If abortion was a solution, you know, what's the real solution? Because honestly, does it solve the problem of incest?
No, it probably just releases her to get traumatized again in that same household, that same situation.
Yeah, it's probably going to happen all over again. Probably gives the perpetrator the right to continue.
Gets rid of the evidence too.
And gets rid of the evidence.
Incest.
But I want to add too, when I was speaking about, you know, rape, you know, I do definitely empathize with that terrible trauma, but I think an abortion is not going to unrape the woman. She's still going to be the victim of a horrible crime. That's not going to take away that pain that she went through. It just adds another trauma, another thing she has to heal from emotionally, another bad memory in her mind. So it's not solving the problem, it's just adding another problem to that poor woman's heart that's already been broken by what she went through.
And honestly, there's another person called Ryan Baumberger who says that his mother, his biological mother, is his hero. He was also put up for adoption, just like Pam Stenzel, but he calls his biological mother his hero because she saved his life. Right? But of course, there are other situations where people would think of abortion, and typically the teen pregnancy is where you're saying, well, you're stopping this young girl's future, her whole career, her whole future is ended with a pregnancy, you know, and people get very concerned that, you know, that this should not be, you know, and what about the convenience or the inconvenience of, well, I'm not married yet. Should I, you know, go through with this pregnancy, and everybody gonna be looking at me, you know? These things really do, you know, bring to mind very strong emotions in people, and you know, the thought of abortion really becomes a thought, a true option to them in their minds, and that inconvenience at the time, it may seem, would be, you know, solved. That problem would be solved. And honestly, the kind of shame that even our own Catholic people unfortunately put on an unwed mother, you know, or unwed pregnant person, is it's something that would, you know, push.
It lends to abortion being an option.
It lends to that. So not just that, but also women's choice. And of course, that's a buzzword around many young professional women. It's my choice, it's my body. You know, why not? You know, I don't need any stretch marks. I don't need any, you know, all of these different things. So with all of those different scenarios, none of these women think about, you know, when life begins, you know? If a teenager, again, with this scenario, you know, having a pregnancy, you know, realizes that, hey, you know what, life begins from day one of a pregnancy. It's not a blob of cells. It's not a blood clot. One person told me this once, honestly. She was on the verge of an abortion, and she said, well, I told her, well, you know, it's already a boy or girl that you have there, you know. Day one in pregnancy, it's, you know, the sex is already determined. The DNA is not the father's or the mother's. Even at day one of pregnancy, it's the child's. And
separate genetic code.
A separate genetic code. And that child, you know, literally, what they call it, conceptus at that point. That conceptus has its own energy. And for the first few days of life, it works on its own energy. It exists on its own energy and develops and grows until it implants into the mother's womb and becomes a fetus. All right? But as I said, you know, this is already a human, you know, form. This is the beginning of life. And if all of those women thought that, you know, life begins from day one, then they would take a step back and say, you know, this is something that I need to stop and say, well, you know what? I was given the chance to live. Why not this little one?
I think a lot is ignorance, and I think many do not realize what it is that they are carrying inside of them, that it's a real human. But it's amazing because even the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists states that as early as within the 5th and 8th week of pregnancy, the brain and spinal cord begin to form. This 5th and 8th week. This is a human being in you. Even when we do or we see pictures or photos of this little, as they would say, blob, that's not a blob at all. There's a lot going on in terms of the brain forming, the heart beating. You know, there's a lot going on in this that does not quite look as a human being as yet. But in truth and in fact, thanks be to God for science, because science now confirms what the church has always been saying, that at conception, this is a separate human being.
Actually, the church didn't always say that, though. In the early stages, they thought it was when it was the quickening of the movement in the womb.
Right, yes.
That's when life began.
Yeah.
But it was through science, and which the church has never been against. The church has always been supporting research and science throughout the ages. And basically they found that, you know, through science, that it's not just at the quickening. It's long before that. It's even from day one of pregnancy. And as you were talking about the heartbeat and the brain waves, from day 21, the heart starts beating. From day 40, that's when the brain waves have been recorded. In fact, they think that babies have, you know, little fetuses have dreams and so forth. So, you know, it's amazing, you know, they respond to light, they respond to sound, you know. Within the first 3 to 4 months, they're responding. So, to say that this is a blood clot.
All right, so you all have mentioned rape, you've mentioned incest and teenage pregnancies. But would that account for the vast number of abortions, or would there be other reasons you think that would cause it? I mean, how often does, you know, first of all, I understand it's difficult to conceive through rape in the first place. So,
it's
not
about
everybody's
1%.
It's usually about, I think it's usually inconvenience and shame. I think inconvenience is a big part of it. But just speaking about the things you were saying about science and so on, I speak about my own experience as a new mother. Even before I knew for sure I was pregnant, I felt a presence within me. I swear to God, I felt a presence of another spirit with me. And I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm pregnant. You know, and I'm going to admit, it was unplanned, out of wedlock and everything else. And there was, you know, some shame, some inconvenience and everything. But I always knew that a child is a life and moment of conception. So I never had any question what I was going to do. And I could tell everyone out there who thinks it's just a clump of tissue that, no, it's a soul. I felt his soul within me from the very beginning, even before the doctor told me for sure I was pregnant. Right. So this is something special you're carrying. It's amazing. I mean, first few days, after I found out, I was walking slowly because I'm thinking, I'm kind of soul within me. I can't bump into anything. I was walking slowly so carefully because I want to protect this little soul within me. It is something precious that you should value and should love and you should respect from the very, very beginning.
Let me throw something in there. Not everybody is so well off There are a lot of people in dire poverty, 4 or 5 children, and there's a prospect now of another child being added to that. That is often, I think, a challenge for abortion. How do you respond to the family that says, listen, we simply cannot afford another child at this point?
Well, certainly they need support. And abortion, as I said, really should not be an option. If they could really, as I said, think about it, this is a life, but it needs to be taken care of. And if I can't take care, then somebody else can, right? And adoption is a beautiful option, as they say. So adoption, in the sense that, this is someone else can take care of this little one, is a beautiful option for anybody who is finding difficulty in taking care of a little one.
And I know several couples who are on the adoption list for years. They're just so desperate for a baby. They have the means, they have the education, they have everything to provide and love a child. And they're on the list for years, just desperate.
That's why I never understand. Why does that process take so long?
Because there aren't that many babies being given up for adoption.
Really?
Yes, that's the sad fact.
Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, the church also wants to walk with the mother through the whole process. So, even in Trinidad, there's the Emmanuel Center that does counseling for pregnant women. Through the process, there's the Elpis Center, which is for pregnancy and family resource type ultrasounds, counseling, etc. There's Eternal Light. And at the end of the program, we'll give some numbers and so on to contact. And that's what the church is saying. It's not only, and I keep reiterating, it's not only about, well, abortion is a bad thing, we have to save the baby. The church wants to protect both mother and the child and bring them to the best possible environment that they can come in within their circumstance. And that is part of the church's process by having different organizations to help walk mothers through the process and fathers.
All right, let's come to the heart of the matter that we introduced at the start. The big thing now is the Zika virus. It is alleged, you all will help me with the facts, but it is alleged that the virus perhaps causes microcephaly in babies, shrunken heads, etc. I think there's still a bit of debate about that, but you all will enlighten. Can that ever then be a justifiable reason for having an abortion if you know ahead of time that your child is going to be deformed, quote unquote, in some way?
Yeah. Well, let me just rewind a little bit as you were saying.
Sure.
Right? The link between the Zika and microcephaly is still far from obvious. Evidence hotly disputed on both sides. In Colombia, for example, there's a report that indicated 22,600 people were infected with probable Zika. That's all, right? Probable symptoms. But when they did further testing, only 1,331 had confirmed lab-tested Zika, right? Why I said that is, once you have symptoms now, even prior to testing, it's almost a given that the option should be an abortion because the baby may be affected. There's a process to also go through to test to see if you really have Zika in the first place. And once even that process is reached, the link between that and microcephaly is still dubious. It's dubious in Colombia, it's dubious in Brazil, and the church's position is whether it's really that or not. Again, it's the same position that this is a human being. This is a life. And notwithstanding what we may term or define perfect baby, well, I'm not sure if I've ever met any. Maybe excluding myself,
yourself,
of course. Yes. I'm sure my mother will confirm that. But what is perfection? And that's what the church is saying, that man sometimes defines perfection in a very narrow way. And we've seen through history what we've defined imperfection as has added so much value to the actual value of life of the family that has a child that is
Special needs.
Specially, yeah.
Special
Yeah,
needs.
special needs. Yeah.
I think again of the case of the BBC story that I stumbled across while I was looking up Zika and microcephaly, very concerned about these things because, of course, at Boma TT we help women to get pregnant, right? And the first thing I came across was a story of Ana Caceres, a Brazilian journalist who just released a book. She wrote a book about her journey with microcephaly. So she has microcephaly and has had it all her life, and how she journeyed, through the support of her neighbors, her family, her friends. That's how she became a journalist. That's how she became the person that she is today. And when she heard this call of certain bodies for abortion, for children, to terminate microcephalic children, she was abhorred. She was, well, who am I? If this is the case, then I don't deserve to live, or what is it? So certainly, look at the case of let's say children with Down syndrome, children born without limbs, autism. Both Nick and I have nephews who have autism.
It brings the family closer together.
Yeah.
It's so much, when you see a child with special needs in your family, you just want to love and support that child and that child's parents so much that it really brings the family together. It's a beautiful thing. It's a blessing.
Yeah.
I have never met actually any, and I saw some interviews with some parents of autistic children, and they posed that question, and they were like, similar, abhorred. What would we have done if we didn't have this beautiful child in our home? The child brought the family together. The child has been the pivotal point of love in the family, of uniting the family.
True.
And just strange enough, just yesterday I was looking at a program on EWTN where a guy wrote a book about autism and his son. And he said, what the world sees as perfection again is so in contrast to what we see as perfection. He said his son is autistic, and he said this boy absolutely cannot tell a lie. He's always truthful, the most loving of persons. They even met the President Obama and so on, and he was preparing to meet them and so on, to shake his hand, the boy. And when he saw Mrs. Obama, he ran to her and gave her a hug, and they have all the photos of them. He said just love exudes from these children, And then you turn and say, well, okay, that child is not perfect. We should get rid of a child like that because it may inconvenience us, or we may have to spend more time nurturing this child, or he may not be able to play sports, which that same boy father was the first thing that hit him, But on this journey with his son, he realized the value that boy has added to their family.
It's amazing.
And then, as we always say, once you start to go down that road, of who deserves to live and who deserves to die, well, today is microcephaly babies, tomorrow it might be you, or people who wear glasses, for example.
Yes, people who are deaf, it might be, you never know.
In Nazi Germany, it was, blacks and Jews were considered subhumans.
And homosexuals.
Which is the same philosophy,
It's the same philosophy.
And
carried to its natural end.
It's the
And
same
Adolf
philosophy.
Hitler was able to convince millions of Germans that all black people and all Jews were, just
Imperfect.
and not deserving of living.
It's the same philosophy.
So it's the same philosophy. There are powerful voices out there saying that, these children, they're a real burden, Why bother? What about the quality of life? What about the productivity of society? It's going to all come down, And they're very strong voices who are saying these things.
I think special needs children teach you how to love. I don't know if that's been your experience with your nephew. They teach you how to love, teach you how to be patient, how to be kind.
Yeah.
They bring out parts of your heart that you didn't even know existed. So they do have a special place in the world.
All right. So that's a good intro to the topic. But, despite all of that, as we know, millions of people every day do actually undergo abortions, unfortunately. And, they think that this is the escape to their problem, their difficulties. But perhaps you can share with us a bit of, what are some of maybe the physical and psychological effects of undergoing an abortion? Is it simply a matter of getting rid of what's inside of you and you move on with your life?
Well, the risks are certainly there for what they call the quote-unquote backstreet abortions, as well as the perfectly done ones. The front street abortions done by the professionals. They include bleeding, infection, possible scarring of the lining of the womb, the risk of breast cancer later on, the risk of future infertility, the inability to have a baby later on, right? That's for induced abortions, and not to mention those who end up on the abortion pill, right? For days, 9 to 16 days of pain, you know?
Okay.
They don't know about this. They say, oh, well, you know, I just have to get rid of it. And when they find out how much they have to go through, then they start to wonder, well, why did I do this? And even after going through that, sometimes the pregnancy is not terminated. And then they're stuck and they're like, oh my gosh, that means I have to go and have it surgically removed now.
Oh.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And those are the physical. And some even claim that the physical are easier to solve and fix rather than the psychological. Actually, for me and for many, the most tragic, I think, part of encouraging women to have abortion, especially by the advocates for abortion, which are either health professionals and, strange enough, mostly women's rights movements, right? They are the main advocates. And for me, the great tragedy in that is that they refuse to inform women of the extreme, and I use that word, extreme emotional and psychological side effects that live with some women till death. Mm-hmm. It lives with them, and as one woman stated, she has a whole center for dealing with women who have had abortions and trying to bring them back into society to be normal. And she said that the problem with abortion is different people say all sorts of things, but the real thing is in our quiet time, we know we have killed our own child in our body. She said, and when that reality hits you at some point, you either mask it for as long as you can, but it always turns up one way or the other. So with post-abortion syndrome, or PASS as the acronym says, it clearly contradicts that deception that, listen, you go in, you fix up, you come out, you're brand new again. Let's go again, right? Because what they're saying is, and this is, I will quote it, the U.S. magazine Psychology Today. That is a non-Christian or Catholic magazine, right? Pure psychologist. They say that post-abortion syndrome can include some or all of the following: guilt, anxiety, numbness, depression, flashbacks, and even suicidal thoughts. In fact, most women suffer with post-abortion syndrome are the loneliest of women because they were previously assured that it was easy and you don't need any set of support. And when they realize to themselves after the abortion that, listen, this is taking a serious toll on me psychologically, there's no one to turn to. And that is where the suppression of it turns up.
Okay, serious stuff there. Well, at this point, we want to show a little video clip. It's precisely on what, Pauline and Alan have spoken of, the effects of the abortion on the mother, both the physical and the psychological effects. So we want to take a little look at that, and we'll come back in a second.
Yeah. My community, they didn't preach having a child was a good thing, so I was panicked. A friend made the appointment for me, but in retrospect, I should have never done it. I was a part of the problem, and I did it without thinking. I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at the people that told me that the most important thing was an education. I'm trying to have a child now, and I can't. I can't. It's all I can think about all day. Don't do what I did. I know it's hard to raise a child on your own. I know it's hard because the man is not there or whatever. But I just know this whole thing about choice, a woman's right to choose, is not freedom. In the end, it's not freedom. It's a prison. At 19 years old, I didn't know that.
I was going ahead with my choice after much deliberation. I felt sadness then. But this was nothing compared to what came after. After it was done, I did not want my baby to leave my sight, my presence. It was ripped away from my body and from my heart. I felt a deep sadness. I cried for days after. There was an emptiness of soul and body. The child is always on my mind. Who was it? What would that child have turned out to be? What were the child's gifts? How would God have used that child's gifts? I would remember what I have allowed to be taken from me till I die.
Okay, so some pretty heavy stuff there. Alan, you wanted to say something?
Similar to what I was saying before, you notice she said, well, the father wasn't there. But also those that would have encouraged her in terms of movements and health professionals and so on. And in the US, the biggest one is Planned Parenthood. They are also unavailable to walk with you after in that grief, for the support. They are not there. There's no psychological therapy. There's nothing. It's out the door. Good in a couple of days with some tablets in case you may see some bleeding, etc., some antibiotics, and that's it. And that is where the church really and truly continues its walk with the woman. That listen, you've made a grave mistake. There's no saying that it isn't. But we're here to walk with you and help you in that healing process because we know the hurt and the psychological hurt and trauma that is there before you. And that is where the church continues the walk with the mother.
Okay. All right, our callers, we want to open the lines to you to get you in on the program. If you have any thoughts you would like to share, maybe questions to put to our panel, we would welcome them. All right. You were telling me about some statistics earlier about the Florida situation.
We all saw that mass killing, which I think is now ranked as the #1 mass shooting in the United States' history. 49 persons gunned down in a couple hours. Tragic. I don't know of any words to really describe that. That parents would have seen their children or loved ones, seen their children walking or going to a party, and then have them no longer because a man with whatever ideology has gunned them down. And that is so tragic. But equally as tragic, and even more so, that neither BBC, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, or no one really and truly informs us of, is that every single day in the Sun State, Florida, 200 innocent babies are killed. Every single day. And that info comes from the Center for Disease Control. So that's really about 73,000 babies per year wiped out.
That's in Florida alone.
That's in Florida alone. If we go to the and there's no major outcry of that, 49 were killed horrifically, but we have 200 every day killed in Florida. And let's go a little bit. In the United States, since the Roe versus Wade, which was in 1973, 59 million babies killed in the U.S. 59 million babies. Worldwide, since 1980, 1.4 billion babies killed. And that, if you try to wrap your mind around it, is 1,100 times the population of Trinidad killed. We have 1.4 billion babies killed around the world since 1980. This year alone, about 19 million babies have been killed through abortion. Today alone, worldwide, 80,000 babies killed. And since this program started, you would have to work it out. It would be 1 every second killed to abortion. Those numbers, I don't know how you wrap yourself around those numbers and remain ambivalent or normal to the tragedy of abortion. Off the face of the earth, 1.4 billion babies worldwide. And that's only since 1980.
I heard somebody respond to those kind of statistics by saying, well, the world would have been so much more overpopulated if all these babies had remained alive. But Pauline, you were telling me something earlier on.
Yes, about
Texas.
Texas. Yeah, if you were to take the entire world's population right now, everyone would be able to fit in the state of Texas alone.
Including India and China.
The entire of the world's population. So this myth of overpopulation is just that. It's a myth. And in truth and in fact, those babies, those unborn children that were killed, if they were alive, if you think about it logistically, they take time to grow and so forth. So it's not a matter of, well, okay, all of them will be living right now.
1.9 billion people.
Yeah, we do have a mortality rate in this in the world too, so you have to level it out. So it's not that, the world we will all be sinking because of all the people on top of the earth, So people just, they look for excuses to, making it a convenience. And abortion becomes contraception for a lot of women. And in fact, one interesting statistic was 80% of those who have an abortion get pregnant soon after. It's always like the body's calling for that baby to come back, right? And they get pregnant, and then 80% abort again.
All right. Pauline, earlier on you mentioned about backyard, what they call backstreet or backyard abortions. Some say the church is being heartless by not trying to support abortion laws that would allow people, women, to have first-class treatment. I know you mentioned earlier on that doesn't stop some of the side effects from happening. But I don't know, would it help perhaps save lives by getting rid of the backstreet abortion thing?
Well, the backstreet abortion, as I said, already has its risks, right? And one tragic story I had heard of was that a woman, after paying thousands of dollars to a backstreet abortionist, ended up, in the hospital having the doctors to take care of her because he botched it, so terribly. I mean, the women are already going through enough, psychologically to get to this level where they're going to have an abortion, then for it to be botched, and then to go through it again in another way. It's terrible. It's going through, a whole ordeal,
So it's not justification then for legalizing abortion so that they would have access to first-class treatment?
No, because what it just says is that they're giving them, more reasons, or women would have more reasons to basically say, well, here, I can easily get rid of it. There would be convenient abortions as opposed to,
All right, I think, we have our first caller for the evening. Good evening, caller. We're hearing you.
Good night to the panel. I just want to start by saying I think it's a very very educational, well-balanced program tonight, very informative. I just want to ask anybody on the panel if they would consider making a comment on, do you think some of the causes can be on a spiritual level, being demonic or something in that nature? I don't know if anybody want to take a...
If the caller, if the causes of what might be demonic?
Of abortion itself, is there, apart from the reasons being convenience, shame, those kind, especially where you have repeat abortions happening with some people, I'm wondering if anybody thinks there could be a deeper reason, demonic in nature. I don't know if anybody wants to.
Okay, thank you, caller.
I would say yes, based on what Jesus said in John chapter 10, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly. So anytime you see stealing, killing, destroying, those are the marks of Satan. When you see life, that's a mark of Christ. So I would say yes, caller. I don't know what would you would weigh in on that as well.
I mean, you said it perfectly almost, that really and truly, on the spiritual level, it's either you're for God or against God.
We have another caller.
There's another caller.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So I agree with that. But I think just to clarify, we don't necessarily mean that mothers who are going to abort are like
demonic.
Possessed or anything.
No.
But what I think Satan, as you said, is against life. So I'm sure, when a mother is contemplating that, he's there poking, encouraging, yes, go ahead. This is something good for you. This will relieve you of your problems.
Not only that, and I mean, I don't want to veer the program off the demonic and so on, but I mean, it's clearly stated by many of the converts to the faith who were involved in demonic stuff and Satanism and so on. And they would say that this guy was in Trinidad recently, they say abortion is a key element in rituals and so on. It's a key element. So much so that they have doctors that are involved in Satanism that are also involved in it in a major way. So death, as you said, is always a part. Horrific death, murder and so on is always a part of the devil's plan.
Okay, good stuff. All right. Yes.
Yes. I wanted to say, though, and you mentioned it, that, many say that, and I think that is the main outcry of many people, that the church is unsympathetic to these mothers. The church is archaic, old laws. We only studying the baby, and what about the mother who is going through all this ordeal and shame and depression? The church doesn't care about mothers and so on. It's only focusing on the children. Well, I find that quite ironic. And why I say that is this. How could it be said that the institution in the world which feeds more people, clothes more people, houses more people, takes care of more sick people, visits the most prisoners in the world, educates more people, how could that institution be uncaring to mothers and unwanted pregnancy? How that same institution, there's no other in the world like the Catholic Church that does all this. As a matter of fact, in the whole Western world, the whole taking care and the genesis of taking care of sick people and so on was originally through Catholic religious orders and missionaries coming out to the New World and moving to the West, and religious and Christian bodies moving, setting up hospitals. So the church has always, and that's why we even call the church Mother Church. The church has always been mother to take care of her children, all, even those who are not in the flock. That has always been the church's position. In the hospitals run by the church, the schools, it's not only for Catholic children, it's not only for Catholic sick people. Mother Teresa, the church has always been open arms as a mother to take care of all. That church should never be even thought about as being unsympathetic to mothers. The converse is true. The church is more concerned about mothers than the health professionals who are promoting abortion for financial gain, and also a lot of the movements that are pushing abortion.
Okay. Any of you want to comment on that?
One thing, we spoke a lot about mothers today, but I really want to know, what is the effect abortion has on fathers? I think that's something that's not discussed enough. Sure. I have some male friends who have had their children aborted against their wishes, and it's something that has haunted them for years. And I find this is something that's not mentioned in the media much. It's not even in Catholic media. You don't hear enough about how abortion affects men. I think that's something that we need to start studying and need to start providing support for men who have been through that trauma, because it's very traumatic for the man as well.
Yeah, because fatherhood begins in the womb too.
Correct.
Exactly.
But aside from the immediate family, the mother, the father, etc., I think we're seeing more and more evidence that this whole worldwide philosophy that abortion is a good thing, that you should limit the size of your family to just one or two, is kind of backfiring. I remember years ago, Janet Smith, a prominent Catholic theologian, came to Trinidad, and she was saying then, that might have been in the 90s maybe, she was saying then that if the current trend of aborting babies continues, that many countries would find themselves dying because the rate of new births to people dying would be so grossly out of sync. Of course, it was considered then to be usual Catholic propaganda and so on. But today, I think many of the, especially developed countries, are realizing the wisdom of the Church's words, that their countries are literally dying from underpopulation.
And I did a talk a couple years ago at UE, and we talked about the fertility rate. The fertility rate for Trinidad and Tobago went from 3.5 per thousand in 1970 to 1.6 per thousand in 2011. A birth rate of 2.1 is needed to replace the current population of industrialized countries.
2.1 is it?
But ranges from 2.5 to 3.3 are needed for developing countries like our own because of our higher mortality rates.
Okay. We're at how much?
Right now, 1.6.
So we are disappearing.
Basically.
And think of the situation with Europe. A predicted population problem for Europe is that their current birth rate being 1.3. By 2030, Europe will have a shortfall of 20 million workers. Instead of 10 persons being able to take care of an elderly person, now less than 3 will be there to care.
That's an economic disaster waiting to happen.
Social as well. Social. In Spain specifically, there are some provinces in Spain. For every one child that is born, 3 people die, Those provinces are going to disappear. And there's no migration because economic hardship and so on. Spain isn't there. Russia is there. You have the whole of Europe, for the most part, is within that. China, the great China in 2015 announced that they're seriously contemplating abandoning the one-child policy.
They have.
I think
it's now a two-child
policy.
Okay.
Another 2 under special circumstances, not 2 per family.
But that's what I
the
know.
board.
Yeah, there's
So
still some stipulations in terms of that.
There.
And more than 30 years after that initial policy, right? We have the Communist Party now realizing, wait, our population is aging and we will also disappear. From 1950 to 1970, children 10 or younger constituted the larger percentage of China's expanding population. By 2060, they said, 70-year-olds will form the largest share. And that info is from the United Nations. 70-year-olds will form the largest share of their population. As I said, Spain, problems. Russia, problems.
I think Japan has a problem as well.
A serious problem.
The whole of Europe, problem.
That's why I said developed countries in particular, perhaps more so than developing, they're having that difficulty.
Yeah. In Japan, I think old people diapers depends outsell baby diapers, which is so sad.
In 1990, in Russia itself, more than 3.9 million abortions. In 1990, they said abortion was the highest. At the highest rate in Russia.
Okay, we'll stick up in there. Okay, we have another caller on tonight. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Hello, yes. Good evening. You were talking about the population in China. I'd like to find out, is Billings used in China?
Yes.
Natural family planning methods?
Yes, the Billings ovulation method is actually in the healthcare system in China. It's recognized as highly effective, so effective, 99% effective in postponing or avoiding a pregnancy. So this method, you know, basically it's all natural, so it is certainly a good option and a preferred option by the Chinese in that it's in its healthcare system. So this is definitely there. Thank you, Kola.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Good night.
So a little bit more on the Billings method. So if women are out there right now and very concerned that their child might get microcephaly and they can't take care of the child, or they're unable to afford a baby at this time and so forth, and they prefer to defer the pregnancy to a later time, this is why Billings is here as well, to help women. Again, they don't have to be on drugs or devices. It's all natural. It's God-given, because God has given women not just fertility all the time, but a specific time of fertility. And so he allowed the Billings to discover this natural way of achieving or avoiding a pregnancy. And it's really about empowering women. When women, you know, use this method, they know exactly what's going on in their body. That's true empowerment for women.
Yes.
And we were going to mention some
we were looking at Russia,
contacts. Okay. Some contacts for those who are interested, those who are pregnant right now and in need of counseling. We have the Manual Center at 628-1064, the Elpis Center at 383-2674. They will offer free ultrasounds, counseling, and other supports for women who are pregnant right now. If you need support, Emmanuel Center 628-1064, Elpis 383-2674. The Mary Care Center for pregnant teenagers who, you know, basically are getting no support. You know, they will literally house those young teens, right, throughout their pregnancy. 622-5880, 622-5880. And if children are born with like microcephaly or any other, and basically the mother figures she cannot take care, there's the Our Lady of the Wayside halfway home for at-risk babies and children. 623-8318. And after the show, if they would like to call me and get those numbers, the number is 384-1659, 384-1659. And I'll also, of course, for the Billings method, of course, the benefits are enormous, so please take advantage of that as well.
Okay. All right. At this point, we have a video that we think kind of captures a lot of what we were saying here tonight. We're wrapping down. It's about 5 minutes, so we thank you, callers, for calling in, but we'll have to stop calls from now. After the video, we'll ask our panelists to give us their final take on this important topic. Let's have the video.
She gave him a child, but he said, I don't want you no more. He gave her a ride, left her right outside the clinic door. Baby, it'll be over so soon. This is the best thing for you. You don't need one more problem, so let this one die. It's just one life, just one life, just one life. Ooh. He stands on the bridge looking down as the world passes by. Nobody sees the great river of tears that he cried. Desperate to end all this pain, don't want to feel it again. Will anyone care if he lives or he dies? Just one life, just one life, just one life. Oh, if Mary say yes to one life that God gave, through this one life, then the whole world was saved. Entrusted with faith, she was able to see the worth of the life she'd received. Truly, God has a purpose and plan for each soul, with hope for the future, for welfare and the whole. The world didn't know him, they couldn't conceive how God in the womb became a human being. Oh, the gift of just one life.
Okay, some very interesting stuff there. So panel, it seemed like a lot of time at the start, but we're down till our last minute or two. Could I ask each of you all then to make your closing remarks or so? Anybody go
with
first?
ladies first?
Okay, well, as a new mother, I would just say that having a baby will be the best thing you'll ever do. It'd be the biggest joy of your life, thing you're most proud of. That's how I feel about my son, Matthew. So I encourage anyone out there who's pregnant, whether you're married or not, whether you're a teenager or a grown woman, have your baby, give life to your child. It will be the best thing you've ever done in your life.
Right.
And I want to say to those who have had abortions that neither do I condemn you. All right? None of us are perfect, but God's love and mercy is bigger than any sin, and He always calls us back. Once we're sorry, He will always take us back. And Rachel's Vineyard is, a healing balm for women who have had an abortion. And it's a weekend retreat. It's supposed to happen again later on this year. And you can call 764-8888. Or again, call me 384-1659. Again, it's about that deep, deep personal, pain that you experience. We understand. If nobody else understands, we do.
Okay, we
So
have 25 seconds.
please do call.
Well, I just wanted to say that I agree with Nika and Pauline, but I also wanted to say that 1.4 billion people since 1980, children that have been killed, many of those would have been just normal human beings that would have brought up normal children in a safe and good environment and would have society right now very normal, unlike what we have today. The church's position is all life is intrinsically valuable.
And we'll have to stick up in there. So that's it, callers. Thank you for an interesting program, and God bless you all.